things you think of when you think about advertising. Where have you seen advertising? I know uh, I've seen it before in the bathroom, on bathroom stalls. It's on your telephone. It's on TV. It's on the billboards as you drive down the road. Can you think of a place that the advertisers haven't tried to catch your attention yet? So far as I know, they haven't gone into the home yet. They may. I haven't heard of anybody yet who's supposed to advertise for somebody unless it's been a poster or something they think is interesting. But pretty much everywhere else, I've seen people who've had advertisements tattooed on their head or shaved into their head shaved with the name of a company logo on their head or something. Advertisers have tried to reach pretty much everywhere we are, haven't they? Pretty much every place that you can think of. And when I look at this, I'm going to look at both sides of the coin. Certainly, when we look at advertising, and if we compare that to the spiritual sense, we as Christians use advertising, don't we? We have some good advertising. We have things on television. It is written. We have a lot of programs that are beneficial. But Satan is also taken to using his advertising too, isn't he? And can you think of an area that Satan hasn't gone into? Just like the commercial advertisers, there's almost no place now that seems like that Satan hasn't tried to reach us in some form or another. And the reason I think that's important, because as a Christian, I think we always need to be, wherever we're at, whatever we're doing, we have to be on guard, because I think Satan is going to attempt to reach us however he can. The Bible calls him the prince of the power of the air. And certainly he seems to, not so much with words and logos, inspire us, but perhaps more in emotion and thought to gain our attention, but also through worldly means and things that we see that are out there. And he uses different tactics. This was seen on a board outside of a restaurant. It says, "Why eat with a clown when you can dine with a king?" This was from Burger King. But certainly they hoped to, with a little humor, to attract some business there, didn't they? This was another one that it was a little hard to read exactly who was doing the advertising, but they really intended to catch somebody's attention. It says, "We prefer not to do business with American servicemen. We would rather do business with 1,000 Al-Qaeda terrorists than one American soldier." At the bottom is labeled a funeral home. But again, an interesting way of catching somebody's attention. And there was a TV program on, and they switches to the commercial. It's raining, it's storming, and outside you see a guy kind of in a looks like he's in black, lurking around the house. Inside, the mother's there with her young daughter, and when the guy gets up outside and starts to go to the house, of course he sees the alarm symbol and all of that. He's scared and he leaves. But again, they perhaps portray on the fear that people have to sell them something. Sometimes it's ego or comfort. BMW labels themselves the ultimate driving machine. They want you to think that this is something that's going to perhaps be a device that you want to be inside, don't they? It's the driver's car, perhaps. It's going to handle well, whatever. Lincoln advertises, or their logo line is, what a luxury car should be. They're trying to paint a picture of what's something they think you'll be interested in. And Satan uses some of the same tactics. Some of the shows that are on, comedy shows, if you sit and watch them, the content isn't worth watching. But they want to draw you in. They want to bring humor to bring you in to what they have to sell. Also, perhaps fear, or maybe fear of rejection. It was interesting when it was in the Lincoln Journal-Star when they first had one So again, sometimes Satan uses the fear deal. You're not going to be popular. You're not going to be welcome. Maybe you won't keep your job to bring across what he wants to bring across. And also perhaps the comfort. Certainly, I think there was a not only comfort, but it's the idea that perhaps happiness. Billy Joel years and years ago had a song that I'd rather laugh at the sinners than cry with the saints because the sinners have much more fun. It's out there, isn't it? Satan's painting the message. You want to be happy? You want to be comfortable? You want a good life? It's not the Christian life. It's not where you want to be. Also, if you take a look at advertisers, they target their specific audience, don't they? Now, until a few years ago, we haven't realized how far people would go to perhaps target a specific audience, but if the name Snowden means anything to you, you know the government has been working hard to try and acquire a lot of information so they can target terrorists. And of course, some of the controversy has been that where they've gathered the data, on whom they've gathered it, and how much they've gathered. And when I was looking at some of the things that they did, it was talking about here in some of these programs. To be honest with you, I couldn't tell you what they all are, but talked about the global surveillance programs, many of them run by the NSA and Five Eyes, with the cooperation of telecommunications companies and the European government. In 2013, the existence of boundless informant was revealed, along with PRISM electronic data mining program, XScore analytical tool, the SIM4 interception project, the muscular access point of the massive passive database, and it goes on and on. You would think this was some made-up type of deal, and yet the NSA stated objective is to collect it all, process it all, exploit it all, partner it all, sniff it all, know it all. And it's not just the federal government that wants that. It's also the business that would like to have that information that you have too. In fact, they turn to companies that sell consumer information. And if you've never heard of the term data broker before, data brokers, they collect, analyze, and package some of our most sensitive personal information and sell it as a commodity to each other, to advertisers, even the government, often without our direct knowledge, recording our likes, dislikes, closest friends, our bad habits, even your daily movements, both on and offline. You may not know them, but data brokers know you. Edith Ramirez, chairman of the FTC, said in a conference call, it's an industry, she said, that operates largely in the dark, yet it has remarkably detailed information that includes online and store purchases, political and religious affiliations, personal income, socioeconomic status. The data broker in the report, for example, said they had 3,000 data categories for nearly every American consumer. Why would they do that? Why would businesses pay for that? Because they want to tailor the products and services they offer to us, and hopefully in such a way that they can provide those types of things that we would be most likely to buy. And the reason I bring that up is a lot of us look at the sin problem and say, not really tempted too much, pretty good Christian life. Satan's got data information that the NSA and the data brokers would just salivate to have. He knows you better than anyone, with the exception of God. An extremely intelligent being, he wants, if you will, his data information is the same way. He's not going to tailor something for me the same as he would for Harvey or Bill. He knows Harvey, he knows me, he knows Bill. He knows where the weaknesses lie and where the temptations are. In fact, if you go back to Matthew 4, you find Satan using this very thing. In Matthew 4, this is tempter came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." Jesus answered, "It is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." Satan came to Jesus where he was at, wasn't he? If anyone you would think couldn't be tempted, it would have been Jesus. But Satan thought he had an in. First, if you are the Son of God, maybe he thought he would have appealed to Jesus' pride, and certainly his hunger. If you're hungry, go ahead. Make some bread. You're hungry, aren't you, Jesus? Certainly God wouldn't want you not to have some bread. Jesus wasn't going to fall for it. He also knew what Jesus' ultimate goal was, to take the kingdom from Satan. And again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. "All this I will give you," he said, "if you'll bow down and worship me." You think that would have been a temptation? Jesus knew what was going to happen during his lifetime. He knew the crucifixion that was coming up. He knew this wasn't going to be an easy event. And here Satan's trying to offer him an easy out. At the very beginning, you don't have to go through all this. You don't have to be abused by the Pharisees and the Sadducees. You can move right into the front position if you like. Jesus didn't take the temptation, but Satan brought the temptation to Jesus that he figured would be most effective. He'd done his homework. Satan will do his homework on us, too. The other one, part sometimes that you find in advertising, is half-truths in small print. Have you ever seen any small print when you bought something? Or perhaps heard it when they do something, perhaps it's on the radio, the fellow says, "Well, we have, you can get a whole bedroom suite for $299, and then after it, there's a whole bunch of stuff that sounds like an auctioneer in high-speed mode, where they go through all the disclaimers of what's going on." Well, just this last week, Southwest Airlines had advertisements for $59 flights from Atlanta to Los Angeles, Chicago, or New York. But according to the federal government and quite a few passengers, when they tried to book those fares, they couldn't find any fares for those routes. The U.S. Department of Transportation announced $200,000 in fines Thursday against the Dallas-based carrier for violating the federal full fare advertising rule. They also tagged on another $100,000 penalty that had been suspended after a same violation of a previous violation of the same rule. Also, kind of in the same light, St. Louis-based Purina filed a complaint against Blue Buffalo, which is a dog food company. The Blue Buffalo built its brand by targeting ingredient-conscious pet owners and falsely promoting its products to be free of chicken or poultry byproducts, as well as corn and other grains. Boston Purina had it tested, and it had those things in it, and of course, they were more than happy to file a complaint against one of their competitors. But Satan has some half-truths and misconceptions out there too. One of the articles I was reading, it says the average school-age student watches hundreds of shootings to solve a problem each week. Heroes as well as bad people, all larger than life, solve their problems with guns. It always works out well in the end in the picture. How about in real life? Remember Jovan Belcher, the Kansas City Chiefs player, who shot himself in the parking lot after shooting his they have an article here. There's a major disconnect between what mainstream media portray, casual sex and sexuality with no consequences. Television, film, music, and the internet are all becoming increasingly sexually explicit, yet information on sexual responsibility remains rare. The United States has the highest teen pregnancy rate in the Western world, and a quarter of all teenagers have had a sexually transmitted infection. Satan doesn't portray that in his ads, does he? His ads are all glossy and nice. None of the bad that is there. When you look at advertising, you see one other thing. They're persistent, aren't they? Have you ever seen an advertiser come out and say, we've given up, we've decided it's just not in our best interest, we're not going to advertise anymore? Or perhaps maybe you've seen this one. We understand we're being annoying to consumers, so instead of advertising 3 times or 5 times a day on television, we're going to do just one, and the rest will just be a moment of silence for you. Does it happen? No. They're persistent, aren't they? And I was reading an article, and I liked the way they described it. It says the devil is tenacious and persistent. It's one thing to say no to one temptation. It is quite another to say no to a persistent temptation. As an example, for a time, Samson withstood Delilah's temptation to tell her the secret of his great strength. But we are told that it came about when she pressed him daily with her words and urged him that his soul was annoyed to death. So he told her all that was in his heart. Note that what won the day for Delilah was persistence. This is a picture of how the devil also works. Advertisers know they have to be persistent. In fact, I think even Winston Churchill said, when you've got a point to make, be persistent. Say it once, say it again, and hammer it home. You've got to be persistent. Satan's persistent in what he wants to push across to us too, and we have to remain diligent. Now, a lot of the time when we talk about what we see on TV or hear on the radio, maybe one big thing that somebody will say, well, what difference does it make? I take in, there's a lot of things that I see in here, but it kind of rolls off like water off the duck. Does it? Do we remember? If I gave you some phrases, do you think you could tell me who they belong to? The Uncola. Uncola 7-Up, like a rock. Save money, live better. Hardly coming down. Like a good neighbor. Okay, just do it. Nike. Melts in your mouth, not in your hand. Okay. Keeps going and going and going. Come on. When you care enough to send the very best, and it's the real thing. We remember, don't we? The advertisers have succeeded, at least in that part. You might say, well, I remember, but it doesn't affect what I do. In 1980, advertisers spent $50 billion on advertising. In 2013, they spent $171 billion. Now, I have a little trouble sometimes trying to figure out how much money that is because I've never seen that much money, and I wanted to correlate what would it equate to if I had that money. What could I buy with that kind of money? So I started looking at the calculation price of some of the companies that are out there. In other words, if I could go and buy all the stock priced at what it is today, certainly if I had the money and announced I was going to buy it, it would go up. But with that kind of money, I could buy Ford Motor Company, Sprint Corporation, Garmin, Federal Express, and have a few $1 billion left over. That's a lot of money. Why do they spend it? And if you think of a Super Bowl commercial this year, a 30-second spot cost The average Super Bowl spot has a production cost that is in excess of $1 million, and some could easily double or triple that price. So for one person to advertise during the Super Bowl, anywhere from $5 to $7 million just to produce a 30-second spot. Why do they do that? They do it because it works. It pays off. GoDaddy, who had a Super Bowl ad, and this is the effects of the aftermath, if you will, of what they reported. The company on Tuesday reported that the Monday after the game was its biggest sales day in company history. Hosting sales jumped 45%. .com domain sales rose 40%. New mobile customers increased by 35%. The company added 10,000 customers in total. It was a lot of money to spend, but they said it's well worth it. We got a good return on our investment. During the 1970s, Miller had invented an entirely new beer that had fewer calories. The guys could drink more of it, thereby spending more money and not get fat. Just one problem. Guys didn't really care about low-calorie beer. The solution? Sell the beer using the burliest guys and the manliest men they could find. The result was a series of commercials featuring sports legends and entertainers in comedic situations with no shortage of cameo spots. More importantly, perhaps, was that Miller's beer sales went from 7 million barrels to 31 million and is still considered the largest expansion ever recorded by a beer maker. Advertising pays off. What we see affects us, and the Bible agrees. In fact, our scripture reading, it says, "But we all, with unveiled faces, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, just as the Lord." How are we being transformed? Because we're beholding God's glory in the mirror. What happens if we're not beholding God's glory and we're looking at something else? The Bible tells us that it's shortened term by beholding we become changed. The advertising industry spends $171 billion because it knows it can change our behavior. It can get us to buy products and services that we might not otherwise buy. Satan knows that when he puts his product, his advertising in front of us long enough, if we watch it long enough, we will become changed. We'll start to buy in what he has to offer. Also, kind of tying into that same type of deal, and I want to, when I look at this, it's almost, if you want to look in the term of a food, if you will, for the brain and what we consume. And most of this is being put into the negative, not into the positive. But we talked about the beer commercial. Something happens to an alcoholic or somebody who drinks a large amount of alcohol. The body senses that its needs have been met. This produces a decreased demand for other foods. Alcohol contains about 9,000 calories per gram. However, these calories do not contain any of the carbohydrates, protein, fat, vitamins, or minerals needed to maintain body function. Alcohol's toxic effects on the gastrointestinal tract also promotes poor nutrition. Alcohol irritates the gut wall, leading to inflammation and ulceration. This can result in a poor absorption of nutrients in the gastrointestinal tract. You might say, well, what does that have to do with me and my spiritual life? If what we're consuming is not spiritual, what Satan wants us to consume, we don't have enough room, quotes, we're getting our, quotes, caloric need taken care of. And even some things that they take up so much of our time, if we don't have time to concentrate on God, can also lead to some of the same thing. Romans 8 tells us that the sinful mind is hostile to God. And I think just as the alcohol irritates the stomach and keeps people from absorbing when they do eat good, nutritious food, when we spend too much time on Satan's stuff and his advertisement, his food, it keeps us from absorbing, if you will, do take it in. And it's not only what we would consider bad stuff, but like anything else, if you if you eat something without any real nutrient content, no matter what it is, and a lot of what we have in life, there's some things that aren't necessarily bad in and of themselves. You can have a good housekeeping magazine articles that may have wonderful things inside of them. They talk to canning or cooking or something else. But again, sometimes if we're so absorbed in things around us that even if they're not bad, that we don't make God the priority, first part in our life, we're going to miss out on that spiritual nutrition that we need. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be that which is bad. Philippians chapter 4, verses 7 and 8 gives us some admonition, and this is where I kind of want to leave us this morning. And the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, so guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Who's going to guard our heart and mind? It's Jesus that will. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence or if there is anything worthy of praise, let your mind dwell on these things. We're being changed whether we want to or not. The advertising industry knows if they put something in front of us long enough, we'll respond. Satan knows the same thing. It's our choice what we take in, what we allow to influence us. We're either being changed slowly, or we're resembling Jesus Christ and God's character, or we're slowly becoming more like Satan. We don't have any other choice in the matter. And hopefully we'll concentrate on getting that which is good, that leads us to a life where we can live with Jesus forever. And our closing song this morning is it's hymn number 500, Take Time to Be Holy. We're going to sing verses 1 and 2, but I want you to think about the words here. It says, take time to be holy, speak oft with thy Lord. Abide in him always and feed on his word. And certainly God